First, Prince Harry's lawsuit against the publisher of the Daily Mail and Mail has begun at the Royal Courts of Justice in London.
When the courtroom doors shut, quiet murmurs quickly transformed into headlines few anticipated. Cameras stood ready, tension thickened in the air, and Prince Harry stepped into a moment that would reshape how the public viewed him. What started as a routine legal process soon unraveled into a charged exchange where every sentence carried more weight than any inherited status. Onlookers felt disbelief ripple through the room as the judge pressed forward, revealing fractures long concealed by tradition and deference. This video breaks down the intense face-to-face encounter and the disclosures it sparked. Inside that courtroom, the clash between authority and responsibility finally unfolded. Prince Harry exposed. As he entered the witness box, the mood shifted instantly. His presence carried gravity, signaling that what lay ahead went far beyond legal procedure. It was an uncommon, unfiltered look at a man who has long argued that his personal boundaries were repeatedly crossed. Harry spoke with little restraint. At moments, his emotions surged so powerfully that everyone present could sense years of intrusion bearing down on him. He appeared open, shaken, yet determined, presenting the image of someone pushed to the edge. From the opening questions, his testimony crackled with irritation and resolve. He spoke pointedly about repeated claims from the press suggesting he had no right to a private life. To him, these weren't abstract legal arguments. They cut deeply, striking at the core of a life constantly displayed for public judgment. Unacceptable, he said, capturing years of alleged overreach in a single word. He went further, describing with visible intensity how coverage had focused on his wife, portraying her life as unbearable under non-stop attention. Each story, each intrusion, each headline was framed not as harmless chatter, but as an intentional effort to gain from personal moments. His account unfolded like a dramatic narrative, shifting between ordinary routines and startling invasions. Conversations he believed were confidential were, he claimed, listened to. His movements tracked, his whereabouts scrutinized. Personal moments with friends, partners, and relatives were pulled apart and presented for mass consumption. In his retelling, the courtroom became more than a place of law. It turned into a platform where private distress met public examination. He was compelled to confront, before a global audience, the long-term effects of intrusions that shattered the sense of privacy he once assumed was guaranteed. Even as he spoke, his composure faltered. His hands trembled, his voice strained, and his eyes reflected years of frustration, sorrow, and restrained anger. Each phrase seemed burdened with a lifetime spent under observation, where personal hardship became shared spectacle. For a fleeting moment, the Duke of Sussex appeared not as a public figure, but as a plainly human individual, exposed and emotional. The courtroom offered more than arguments over legality. It revealed the personal cost of existing beneath constant focus and relentless media force. By the close of his initial testimony, a clear picture emerged. This was someone caught between private suffering and public expectation, laying bare the emotional impact of a life where every decision, bond, and error could become the next headline. Harry struggled to contain his reactions, openly expressing distress over how one outlet, in particular, had portrayed his family. But how far did this pressure shape him? And could he maintain control under such scrutiny? Stay with us to see how emotion collided with authority. From the instant Prince Harry took the stand, it was evident this would not be an ordinary session. His stance, rigid and guarded, reflected someone visibly unsettled, carrying deep personal weight into an environment that prizes restraint. Rather than offering calm, concise replies, he frequently challenged the questioning, reacting sharply to guidance meant to keep proceedings orderly. At times, his frustrations spilled over, filling the room with an uneasy energy rarely seen in such formal settings. Legal analysts and seasoned observers quickly noted how unusual his conduct appeared. In civil proceedings, credibility and composure are vital. His defensive tone stood out. Instead of sticking to direct answers, he often resisted instructions to leave technical arguments to his legal team. He interjected, clarified, and defended himself, blurring the boundary between procedure and personal grievance. While many sympathized with his reactions, given the emotional weight of the case, this approach carried genuine risk. Experts cautioned that displaying frustration so openly could weaken the very position he aimed to strengthen, turning heartfelt moments into strategic vulnerabilities. What made the day especially intense was the contrast between his tense exchanges and brief moments of calm after short breaks. Initially, his posture remained stiff, his replies sharp, his agitation unmistakable, as though the examination of his private life seeped into every gesture. Yet during pauses, a subtle change appeared. His shoulders relaxed, his voice softened, and the individual behind the public image surfaced. A prince caught between lingering anger and the strict expectations of courtroom conduct. It was a fragile, almost painful balance. Managing raw emotion while adhering to formal discipline, resisting the instinct to react when feeling wronged. For many watching, the scene provided a rare insight into the internal conflict of someone whose personal world has been under constant watch. Harry's time in the witness box highlighted not only the emotional toll of prolonged legal battles, but also the narrow path walked by public figures defending themselves under intense observation. It was a moment blending openness, frustration, and determination. A turbulent display that left a lasting impression on everyone present and those following beyond the courtroom walls. Composing himself proved difficult, burdened by both the seriousness of the case and personal wounds that resurfaced with each question. But could such visible emotion ultimately work against him? And did he have solid proof to support the depth of his claims? In the next part, we'll explore how his testimony itself came under scrutiny, with credibility placed squarely on trial. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss what happens next. As the hours passed, the focus inside the courtroom subtly, but decisively shifted. What had begun as an examination of alleged press misconduct evolved into a far more delicate question. Could Prince Harry himself be relied upon as a credible witness? Every movement, every pause, every carefully framed response was scrutinized. Journalists, legal analysts, and members of the public sensed the tension growing. The individual who had long positioned himself as the target of invasive coverage now stood under an equally intense spotlight. The narrative had changed. The trial was no longer only about the actions of the press, but about the strength and consistency of Harry's own account. During questioning, Harry faced assertions that threatened to weaken his position. He firmly rejected claims that he had ever used the alias, Mr. Mischief, to contact reporters, stating unequivocally that the accusation was untrue. He acknowledged that certain conversations were difficult to recall clearly, attributing gaps to the passage of time, and dismissed suggestions that people within his social circle had intentionally leaked information. Each denial was delivered with confidence, yet the reaction in the room remained cautious. Observers questioned whether these responses rested on verifiable facts or were shaped by personal belief and interpretation. Some noted that several of his statements relied heavily on feelings and perceptions rather than concrete evidence that could be independently confirmed. This reliance introduced uncertainty, allowing doubt to creep into how his testimony was received. Matters grew more complex when critics suggested Harry was using the case as a platform to voice grievances extending beyond the legal claims. He appeared to connect press actions to personal hardships, including strained relationships, difficult periods in his life, and the pressures of constant public attention. By broadening the narrative, he reframed the trial as more than a dispute over privacy. It began to resemble a wider confrontation with the system surrounding him. For many watching, this raised concerns that emotion might be overtaking objectivity. The courtroom atmosphere reflected this shift. The discussion was no longer confined to whether unlawful information gathering had taken place. Instead, it tested Harry's clarity, consistency, and reliability. Each word carried heightened importance, and the emotionally charged tone of his testimony prompted critical questions. Could his powerful expressions of frustration and pain ultimately undermine the very case he had fought to bring forward? Was his openness strengthening his argument, or quietly placing it at risk? By this stage, the stakes felt significantly higher. A witness accustomed to scrutiny was now facing its sharpest form. The courtroom became a space where law intersected with deeply human challenges, memory, emotion, and the struggle to be believed. Harry, who had initiated legal action against a media outlet, found himself defending his own narrative when accused of unfairly characterizing a journalist. This raised a broader issue. What does it truly mean to challenge journalism or question the work of reporters? To understand this, attention turned to Harry's long-standing tension with the press and the deeper trust dilemma at its core. At the heart of this debate lay Harry's uncompromising view of modern reporting. In his perspective, articles citing unnamed sources or referencing friends often felt like deliberate invasions, even suggesting wrongdoing. This stance unsettled many experienced journalists, who argued that such a view oversimplified the realities of news gathering. Within the profession, confidential sources are not only lawful but essential, protecting individuals while allowing important information to surface. Anonymous sourcing, they explained, is frequently used to safeguard careers, expose issues responsibly, or report sensitive matters, not to conceal misconduct. Harry's tendency to rely on inference rather than direct proof intensified the tension surrounding his testimony. Suspicion often blended into accusation. Observers pointed out that interpreting every discrete conversation as harmful intent placed others in nearly impossible positions. Individuals repeatedly mentioned during proceedings found themselves drawn into public speculation, regardless of their actual involvement. This dynamic fueled a cycle of mistrust, amplifying stress and raising questions about fairness. Beneath these exchanges lay a deeper layer of personal history. From adolescence onward, Harry has lived under relentless attention. This experience shaped a worldview where privacy became not just valuable, but essential. Any perceived breach felt like a profound betrayal. While understandable, this heightened vigilance carried its own risks. The boundary between justified concern and excessive suspicion can become blurred. Many watching saw a man deeply influenced by earlier violations of trust, fiercely protective of his inner circle, yet vulnerable to misinterpretation. His intense alertness, though rooted in lived experience, risked being viewed as overreaction. This emotional undercurrent added complexity to the proceedings. The courtroom drama was no longer only about alleged violations, but about trust itself, how it forms, how it erodes, and how past experiences shape present reactions. Understanding Harry's mindset required more than legal reasoning. It demanded recognition of the emotional and psychological toll of a life lived under constant observation. His mistrust made routine reporting appear threatening, feeding anxiety and tension. But this was not his first confrontation with the press. To fully grasp the situation, it became necessary to revisit his earlier legal battles. This case was part of a longer history. In 2023, Harry took on Mirror Group newspapers, marking a pivotal moment. He became the first senior royal in more than a century to personally testify in court. That image alone captured global attention. The case examined dozens of articles for evidence of unlawful practices. The outcome was significant. Several articles were found to have been produced through improper methods, and damages were awarded, acknowledging the harm caused. The publisher later settled additional claims, reinforcing the scale of the issue. This background cast a long shadow over the current proceedings. Having previously secured a win, expectations were elevated. His conduct, composure, and strategy were now judged against that earlier success. Every reaction carried added weight. This history helped explain the intensity of the present case. It was not an isolated dispute, but part of an ongoing struggle to protect personal boundaries against powerful institutions. In the next part, we'll look at how Harry's past relationships entered the courtroom and why his emotional reflections on former loves added another unexpected layer to the trial. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the final part of this unfolding story. As the proceedings moved forward, the courtroom took an unexpected turn. Beyond legal arguments and disputes over media conduct, Prince Harry's testimony began to drift into deeply personal territory. The most emotionally charged moments did not center on his marriage or his current family life, but on relationships from his past that still seemed to weigh heavily on him. Former partners became part of the narrative, transforming the trial into something far more intimate than many had anticipated. These references were not casual or strategic. They were emotional, reflective, and revealing. Each name carried with it a story of strain, regret, and unresolved feeling. When Harry spoke about Chelsea Davy, his tone shifted noticeably. His words were filled with remorse as he described how her life changed once it became entangled with his public role. He explained how constant attention, speculation, and pressure disrupted what might otherwise have been a private, ordinary relationship. According to his account, the spotlight followed them relentlessly, turning everyday moments into material for commentary and judgment. Harry framed this period as one marked by guilt, suggesting that his position exposed those closest to him to stress they never asked for. His reflections painted a picture of a relationship worn down not by personal conflict alone, but by the suffocating presence of outside scrutiny. Similar emotions surfaced when he referenced Cressida Bonus and others from his past. These relationships, he implied, were gradually eroded by suspicion, alleged leaks, and the persistent glare of attention. In his telling, mistrust crept in slowly, fueled by fears that private details were being shared without consent. Whether these fears were justified or not became secondary to the emotional reality he described. The damage, he suggested, was lasting. Even after these relationships ended, the emotional residue remained. These recollections raised difficult questions. Why did these past connections continue to surface in a case focused on current media disputes? What role did unresolved emotion play in shaping his present actions and reactions? Observers noted that his testimony offered more than supporting examples. It revealed a man still carrying the emotional weight of earlier experiences, using them to explain his heightened sensitivity and deep mistrust. The courtroom, in these moments, felt less like a legal forum and more like a space where old wounds were reopened under bright lights. By revisiting these chapters of his life, Harry exposed a level of vulnerability rarely seen. His words suggested lingering guilt, a sense of responsibility, and an ongoing struggle to reconcile personal loss with public duty. Each memory added depth to his narrative, but also risked blurring the focus of the case. Personal reflection, while powerful, introduced complexity. It invited sympathy, but also skepticism. Some questioned whether these emotional accounts strengthened his argument or distracted from the central legal questions. The trial then shifted again, this time towards specific members of the press. Attention turned to journalists whose names were raised during testimony. Harry's legal team presented them as part of a broader system that, in their view, consistently overstepped boundaries. Their reporting was portrayed not as routine journalism, but as participation in a pattern of intrusion. This framing intensified the stakes, placing individual reputations alongside institutional practices under examination. However, voices from within the media industry pushed back. These journalists were widely regarded as established professionals known for traditional reporting methods, open-source research, and long-developed contacts. According to media veterans, their work followed accepted standards rather than improper conduct. This contrast between courtroom portrayal and professional reputation created tension. It highlighted the difficulty of distinguishing between unethical intrusion and aggressive, but lawful reporting. The absence of certain key sources, many no longer alive, further complicated matters. Without their testimony, confirming or refuting specific claims became nearly impossible. This gap left space for interpretation, assumption, and doubt. The courtroom became a place where facts, perceptions, and unanswered questions collided. Each side navigated uncertainty, aware that proof was not always clear-cut. The case began to symbolize something larger than a single dispute. It reflected a long-standing struggle between public figures and those who cover them. At its core lay a fragile balance. The right to privacy on one side, the freedom of the press on the other. Every exchange echoed broader questions about ethics, responsibility, and power. The judge was tasked not only with weighing evidence, but with navigating this wider context. As the trial approached its critical phase, attention turned to strategy and consequence. The legal threshold was not absolute certainty, but likelihood. The court needed to determine whether it was more probable than not that unlawful practices had occurred. In such a framework, perception mattered immensely. Small details, tone, and demeanor could influence judgment. For Harry, the implications were vast. Even a narrow success could send ripples through the media world, affecting reputations, finances, and future reporting practices. Yet critics argued that his own approach might be undermining his position. On one hand, he engaged with media coverage, offering commentary and context. On the other, he condemned the same system for intrusion. This duality created tension. Observers questioned whether this contradiction weakened his message. Combined with his emotionally charged testimony, it raised concerns that personal feeling might be overtaking disciplined legal strategy. Courtrooms demand balance. Emotion can humanize a witness, but it can also raise doubts about objectivity. In this case, the very qualities that made Harry's story compelling, openness, frustration, and intensity, also carried risk. Each reaction, each emphatic response, became part of the evidence in the eyes of those watching. As proceedings neared their conclusion, the focus subtly shifted once more. The outcome might hinge less on what the press did and more on how Harry presented himself. His credibility, composure, and consistency stood at the center. The trial evolved into a test not only of media conduct, but of how a public figure navigates scrutiny when the spotlight turns inward. In the end, this case was about more than legal claims. It was about perception, trust, and the intersection of personal history with public accountability. The decision would not simply resolve a dispute. It could influence how media and high-profile individuals interact for years to come. So now the question remains: did Prince Harry's emotional courtroom reaction strengthen his fight for accountability, or did it quietly place his case at risk? Share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss the next deep dive.